Hakuyula. Hello, everyone. Kashua Paktina Kakinalan. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Naktaka Jess McCool. My name is Jess McCool and I use she, her pronouns. I'm joining virtually from Schmiwich Land, also known as Santa Barbara. I'm a program associate for the Community Resilience Centers program at the California Strategic Growth Council. Thank you for tuning in for the CRC Round 1 application webinar series. In this video, we will be reviewing the CRC Planning Grants. Before we get started, if you wish to request webinar materials in an alternative format or need translation or interpretation services, please let us know and we will follow up to get you those materials and services. There are a few ways you can do this. You can email our team inbox at crc@sgc.ca.gov, or you can click on the link in this video description and let us know in the post-webinar survey. We also really quickly wanted to share ways you can contact us and stay informed about the CRC program. So please visit the webpage, and in particular, the CRC application materials webpage to find guidance documents and other application materials. We're experiencing slight delays in updating our webpage, so while the most accurate information will be represented there eventually, the quickest way to receive updates about the program is by signing up for the CRC email list, which you can do so at one of the links in the video description as well. As always, you can email the team at crc@sgc.ca.gov. And although we do have someone from the team consistently monitoring this inbox, there is higher traffic than normal, so our response times are longer than average, but we are actively working on getting back to all of the messages we're receiving. And if you have a question about the planning grants that isn't addressed in this video, you can submit those questions on the post-webinar survey linked in the video description below, and we'll follow up with you with those answers. Or additionally, you can attend an upcoming office hour. We will share the full schedule later on in this video. So welcome to the Community Resilience Center's Round 1 application webinar series. This is the second webinar in a series of 4. The first webinar in this series is already posted in the video playlist. If you're new to learning about this grant program, I'd recommend watching that first video as it provides a more broad overview of the CRC Round 1 final guidelines and notice of funding availability. The remaining 3 will cover the details specific to each grant type. Today, we're focusing on CRC planning grants, and the other 2 videos in the series focus on project development grants and implementation grants. So here is our plan for the webinar today. We'll start with a brief program overview and then focus in on planning grants. We'll talk about the application process and components, and then we'll do a demo of the submittable application platform and then close out. And here are some of our objectives for today's webinar. To provide an overview of the CRC Round 1 planning grants, to review the application process and components, to offer reminders and updates about upcoming due dates, application materials, and office hours, and to demo the submittable application platform. So I'm going to pause here and let the rest of the team introduce themselves. So I'll pass to Dora to start us off.
Hello, my name is Dora Monterosa. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a CRC program analyst on the team, joining you from Nisenan Land, also known as Sacramento, California. And I'll go ahead and pass to Angel next.
Hi, my name is Angel de Rios. I use they, them pronouns. I am a CRC intern, joining virtually from Kumoya Land, also known as Calexico, California. Additional members of our team who were unable to join us today include Coral Abbott, program manager, Lisa Hugh, program analyst, and Jessica Cervantes, program associate. I will now present the next section. We will start with a brief overview of the entire program, then we will zoom in on planning grants, including the application process and components. Then we will share the screen to show you all the submittable application platform, and then close out with some final reminders about office hours and the program timeline. Here's the final funding breakdown for Round 1. SGC received $110 million through the general fund in this current budget year to implement the program. This includes grants, staff to work on the program, technical assistance, and evaluation. Of the total funds, $98.6 million will be available for Round 1 grants. A total of $5 million will be available for CRC planning grants, each ranging from $100,000 to $500,000. Planning grants will fund communities in initial stages of CRC project development that needs funds for plan development, community engagement, coordination, and other activities necessary to prepare for subsequent CRC rounds and other related funding streams. A total of $9.6 million will be available for CRC project development grants. These grant awards each range from $500,000 to $5 million. Project development grants will fund pre-development and basic infrastructure activities that advance community-serving facilities, ability to serve as a future community resilience center and prepare guarantees for subsequent CRC rounds and other related funding opportunities. A total of $84 million will be available for CRC implementation grants, each ranging from $1 million to $10 million. Implementation grants will fund new construction and upgrades of facilities to serve as community resilience centers, as well as services and programs that build overall community resilience. Now we'll go on to the program overview. Our overall approach is pulled from a combination of requirements from statute, priorities we heard during initial listening sessions, stakeholder interviews and meetings, advice from folks who have experiencing developing resilience centers or hubs, and the feedback we heard during the public comment period. Here's a quick overview. We're going to build climate resilience and community resilience, prioritize community serving locations, require community engagement and collaborative stakeholder structure. The purpose of the collaborative stakeholder structure is to form local, diverse, multi-stakeholder partnerships to foster long-term investment in the community's vision for transformation. The CSS, or the collaborative stakeholder structure, should include local residents and community-based organizations, CBOs, and lead the governance and decision-making for the project. Balance short-term and long-term needs, both during emergencies and year-round programming to enhance community resilience. Prioritize most vulnerable communities and populations. And lastly, to fund a mix of projects, climate impacts, facility types, and lead applicants, and geographic diversity spanning rural and urban communities, as well as unincorporated and incorporated communities. Now we'll go on to the core components. The CRC model is intentionally flexible to account for the vast spectrum of communities across California. Core components, however, include the following: multi-stakeholder partnerships, which per statute must include local residents and community-based organizations in governance and decision-making; robust, meaningful, and culturally appropriate community engagement throughout all phases: design, application, implementation, and evaluation; capital projects, referring to the physical infrastructure investments to CRC facility itself and CRC campus amenities like a bus stop or a community garden; community resilience services and programs, referring to the social infrastructure investments and services and programs to ensure ongoing year-round usage of the CRC while strengthening of local community resilience. Equipped with these core components, community resilience centers will empower communities, respond to climate emergencies, and provide a year-round services and programs to enhance both climate resilience and community resilience. Now we'll go on to the priority communities. All communities are eligible to apply for the CRC program. We are directed per statute to prioritize projects located in and benefiting, quote, under-resourced communities, end quote, which is a set definition in state code. The map pictured here highlights all, quote, under-resourced communities, end quote, in blue. We added language to make very clear that tribal lands, unincorporated communities, and rural communities that meet the definition of under-resourced communities qualify as, quote, priority communities, end quote, for the CRC program. All applicants must discuss if and how their proposal considers, involves, impacts, and benefits priority communities. Now we'll go on to the priority populations. In alignment with the California Governors of Emergency Services, Cal OES, and other state agencies, the CRC has identified the following priority populations: individuals with physical, developmental, or intellectual disabilities, individuals with chronic conditions or injuries, individuals with limited proficiency, older adults, children and pregnant people, low income, unhoused, and or transportation disadvantaged or public transit dependent people. Each CRC proposal must identify, work with, and intentionally serve the needs of priority populations in the proposed neighborhood containing the CRC facility. Now we're going to go on to the funding targets. We have two types of funding targets. To meet the statewide geographic diversity required by statute, the program commits to awarding at least one CRC grant, any grant type, to each of the Cal OES Fire and Rescue Mutual Aid regions. Here is a map of those regions to the left. We also have tribal funding target, We intend to fund a minimum of 5 qualifying tribally led CRC projects in round 1 across all grants types. I will now pass this on to Dora to talk about the planning grants.
So our planning grant award range from $100,000 to $500,000 each. As Angel mentioned, the CRC planning grants are a great fit for applicants exploring ideas and potentials for local resilient centers. Planning grants fund planning activities to prepare communities for future funding opportunities in programs that align with CRC program objectives, with a specific focus on preparation for implementation grants for subsequent CRC rounds. CRC planning grant activities, therefore, should focus on developing a proposal for a future CRC implementation grant or for similar funding opportunity at the state or the federal level, and must demonstrate effective, robust local community engagement and planning efforts. These are the program objectives specific towards our planning grants. It's to advance the local community's ability to identify, vision, design, construct, resource, and activate sites as community resilient centers, to ensure or increase accessibility of CRCs to community members, especially during emergencies, to nest, build, strengthen, and sustain local community resilience in connection with the proposed CRC, and to demonstrate consistency with the state's planning priorities contained in section 65041.1 of the government code. These priorities intend to promote equity, strengthen the economy, protect the environment, and promote public health and safety in the state, including urban, suburban, and rural communities. So next we'll go into eligibility. We are keeping eligible applicants and eligible facility types very expansive. Our goal is to be less prescriptive and much more flexible to acknowledge the different needs in different communities throughout California. So in terms of our eligible facility types, CRCs will serve as resilient centers, both during specific climate or emergency events, as well as provide ongoing programming and community services year-round. So examples of existing community serving locations include, but are not limited to, schools, libraries, community centers, youth and or senior centers, health clinics, places of worship, community colleges, and food banks. So community serving locations definitely count as eligible facility types. Regardless of the exact facility type, applicants must demonstrate how that facility serves or could serve the local community, both during emergency activations and year-round during non-emergencies. CRC facilities and any campus amenities associated with a CRC facility must be publicly accessible year-round. For CRC planning grant applications, at least one proposed site is required per application by the time of application submission. Applicants will be required to demonstrate site control or an ability to gain site control of all proposed project sites within the grant term if funding is awarded. Next, we'll talk a little bit about eligible applicant types. So all applicants must be based in California and can include the following: California Native American tribes, coalitions or associations of nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations or CBOs, faith-based organizations, and non-governmental organizations or NGOs, community development finance institutions or community development corporations, emergency management, response, preparedness, and recovery service providers and organizations, philanthropic organizations and foundations, private or nonprofit, private sector and consultants, public entities, including schools and public libraries, California incorporated cities, California counties, including unincorporated communities, local, regional public agencies and districts at the county level, including community choice aggregators, special districts, joint power authorities, councils of government, and other forms of local government, and small businesses. If the lead applicant is a public agency, they must provide evidence of a past formal resolution in the CRC proposal that includes an authorization to apply for and accept CRC planning grant funds, and an authority to execute all related documents if they are awarded. There are sample resolution letters available in the application itself on our Submittable platform. If the public agency is a co-applicant, then the applicant must provide a letter of support from the public agency in the CRC proposal. There is further guidance on this included in the application on Submittable. If the lead applicant is a private entity, including private sector or consultants, private philanthropic organizations, and other for-profit entities, the lead applicant must partner with a community-based organization or tribe that advances climate, racial, economic, or health justice and works with community the CRC intends to serve. And they must also submit a letter of recommendation from the community-based organizations or tribe detailing their history of interaction, collaboration, and outcomes. State entities such as agencies, departments, commissions, offices, councils, and interstate compact entities may not apply as the lead applicant. However, state agencies and entities are eligible as co-applicants. The University of California and the California State University systems are exempt from this guidance, and they may apply as a lead applicant where appropriate. So a little bit here on our collaborative stakeholder structure. The CRC program does require a collaborative stakeholder structure, forming localized place-based partnerships to ensure consistent buy-in and support, shared values and governance, and alleviation of existing power imbalances that may skew input and decisions, especially under time and resource constraints or emergency conditions. Collectively, the collaborative stakeholder structure will provide support for public engagement and drive decision-making throughout the project implementation. The collaborative stakeholder structure is designed to overcome challenges inherent in the shared decision-making and to build robust local community governance over projects happening in residents-owned neighborhoods. The collaborative stakeholder structure must involve multi-stakeholder partnerships and include local residents and community-nominated members, such as CBOs, and applications will be evaluated on the degree to which they incorporate community leadership application, especially in decisions like site selection, proposal development, and project design, implementation, and evaluation. Members of the collaborative stakeholder structure are not considered co-applicants that are responsible for receiving funds as subrecipients to carry out parts of the grant. They are a coalition of partners that govern and just direct decision-making for the entire CRC project. For the planning grants, although it is not required to have the collaborative stakeholder structure formed by the time of application, planning grant applicants should propose initial partners in their application, if possible. As the project progresses through the grant term, we will have TA providers that will work with grant recipients to build the collaborative stakeholder structure where appropriate. Within the first year of the grant term, award recipients must develop a collaborative stakeholder structure, resulting in a signed partnership agreement and/or a memorandum of understanding. So here's a little bit on the partnership agreement. Within that first year of the grant term of a planning grant, applicants must develop their partnership agreement. And it must be signed by the lead applicant and all co-applicants that describe the governance, organization, and financial relationships of the collaborative stakeholder structure. Any applicant whose planning area crosses municipal boundaries, federally recognized tribal territory boundaries, or other jurisdictional boundaries is required to submit a letter of commitment from each relevant public agency at the time of application. The letters must state that the agency is aware of the CRC planning grant application and the requirements in the final guidelines and intends to sign and execute an MOU that complies with the terms listed in the final guidelines. You can find these in section 6.3 collaborative stakeholder structure on page 32. A signed MOU will be required before the grant is executed if awarded. All CRC planning grant applicants are required to define a planning area and justify selection through discussion of relevant strategies and activities within the planning area. The planning area must contain a specific CRC facility site, which is the primary focus of the CRC planning grant proposal. If a planning area bridges jurisdictions, then completing an MOU between relevant parties will be required within the first year of the grant term. Tribal projects located on restricted fee lands must comply with the requirements of the jurisdiction on which the land is located. Eligible planning activities include preparing applicants to apply for a CRC implementation grant or other similar grants for future funding, identifying and preparing project sites for the future development into community resilience centers, completing physical analyses and studies, building capacity both internally among staff and departments, as well as externally among stakeholders, evaluating, updating, and streamlining various policies and codes currently enforced by the planning department and other local departments, preparing or updating local jurisdictional plans, designing or enhancing community engagement that results in innovative and meaningful programs and practices. You can find more on this in section 3.2, eligible planning activities, for further details. Ineligible costs. There are some ineligible costs for the CRC Planning Grant. CRC grants funds may not be used for costs associated with construction or ground disturbance activities for the planning grant. Indirect costs in excess of 12% of the awarded CRC funds, with the exception of federally recognized Native American tribes who may use the indirect cost rate negotiated with the federal government. Expenses and activities incurred outside the term of the grant award. We are also unable to use CRC funds to pay for fossil fuel powered appliances and infrastructure like diesel generators or gas powered appliances. CRC funds cannot be used to supplant other committed funds for any part of the proposal. And while many engagement related costs like food, childcare, and transportation costs are definitely eligible, we cannot pay for the following outreach costs: direct cash benefits, subsidies, or participant incentives. We also cannot pay for the projects without long-term operations and maintenance plans. You can find a full list of ineligible costs in the final guidelines section 7.1, eligible and ineligible costs, on page 35. I'll now pass to Jess to cover cost breakdowns.
Great, thanks, Dora. So indirect costs may account for up to 12% of the total CRC grant award. The 12% maximum of indirect cost applies to all entities, including University of California and California State University entities, except for federally recognized Native American tribes, which may use the indirect cost rate negotiated with the federal government. Indirect costs are those that are not directly tied to the grant, but are necessary for the general operation of the organization. Some examples could include personnel costs associated with administrative, supervisory, legal, and executive staff, personnel costs associated with support units, including clerical support or housekeeping, and operating expenses and equipment costs not included as part of the direct project costs, functions such as accounting, budgeting, audits, business services, rent, utilities, supplies, etc. Documentation related to the determination of the grantee's indirect cost rate must be retained by the grantee for audit purposes. Each lead and co-applicant must provide a letter of commitment and describe the full or part-time staff dedicated to planning in the proposed work plan and budget. There is a workbook that includes the work plan and budget template available in the application on Submittable. CRC staff will first evaluate all applications to ensure timely submission, eligibility, completeness, and compliance with submission requirements. Only completed applications that meet all the program thresholds will advance to the interagency review panel. Program thresholds for planning grants include the following: general completeness. This is looking at all required materials that are completed and submitted on time, including work plans, making sure they are adhering to the appropriate period and contain sufficient detail and comply with the submission requirements. Applicant eligibility. The lead applicant is an eligible entity and demonstrates commitment to a signed partnership agreement by the end of year 1 of the term for the collaborative stakeholder structure. We look at facility eligibility, where the applicant demonstrates an ability to gain site control for all proposed sites within the grant term, and planning area eligibility, where the planning area is clearly defined and the site or sites are identified and eligible. So all CRC grants will be evaluated and awarded through a competitive process. Applications will be submitted electronically, and all applications and submitted materials will be treated in accordance with the Public Records Act requirements. So certain information could be subject to those requirements and will be publicly disclosed if requested. Just wanted to remind everyone of that. So one eligible entity on behalf of their future collaborative stakeholder structure will complete a CRC planning grant application and submit materials to SGC. CRC staff will then evaluate applications to ensure that they are both eligible and complete. Staff will then evaluate applications using those program thresholds that I listed earlier. Applicants will have a brief window to resubmit any missing information that is flagged by CRC program staff. And if an applicant is unable to meet those program thresholds, their proposal will not proceed to the next step of the review process. If a proposal does meet all of the program thresholds, CRC program staff and an interagency review panel will evaluate the proposals using the scoring criteria. Applicants will receive a single score out of 100 points. Staff will recommend awards based on these scores, and applicants who have program thresholds may be invited to an interview, who have met the program thresholds may be invited to an interview with CRC program staff and potentially members of the interagency review panel. Based on the interagency review and of the applications and interviews, staff will finalize and prepare award recommendations to present to the SGC council members for final review. Final funding decisions will be subject to programmatic considerations, including diversity of project types and geographic locations, including but not limited to a variety of climate impacts, representation from rural and urban, incorporated and unincorporated communities. The Strategic Growth Council will make final awards at a council meeting. So the completed application for CRC Planning Grants includes information on the local community and residents, especially the priority communities and priority populations and other vulnerable residents, a summary of local climate risks, exposures, and adaptation resilience measures, a summary of local community resilience, a summary of community engagement to date, including descriptions of type, quality, depth, methods, and previous data or work developing a plan, and planning activities within the planning area and how they will advance community identified priorities, especially for priority communities, priority populations, and other vulnerable residents. In addition to the completed application, a lead applicant must also submit the following, listed here in the second bulleted list at the bottom. You can also see this full list of application components for the planning grants in the CRC Round 1 Final Guidelines section 9.2 application components on page 50. Feel free to screen capture this slide to use as an informal checklist or a guide to reference as you're developing and submitting your application materials. So CRC planning grant proposals, as mentioned, will be scored out of 100 points according to the following criteria. For our vision and objectives, we're awarding 15 points. Here, we're looking for a project area that's planning area that's clearly defined with sites identified. A vision statement that reflects the CRC Planning Grant Program Objectives and approach is also something we're looking for, and proposed eligible activities that effectively advance all of the CRC Planning Grant Program Objectives. Community Profile and Engagement Plan is out of a total of 25 points. Here we're looking for a clear and compelling description of the community, community engagement to date, diverse proposed community partners for the future collaborative stakeholder structure, and a comprehensive proposed community engagement plan for the grant term. There is a community engagement plan template in the application on Submittable. Applicants should also especially focus on outreach, engagement, and improved outcomes for priority communities and priority populations. Also in the community profile and engagement plan category, CRC program will award the following points to proposals, including the following in a collaborative stakeholder structure, if already formed, or proposed for the future collaborative stakeholder structure. 1 point to proposals where the lead applicant is a California Native American tribe, an eligible entity having co-ownership with a California Native American tribe, or an eligible entity established by a California Native American tribe to undertake climate resilience projects. 1 point will be awarded to proposals that include a California Native American tribe or tribal communities in the collaborative stakeholder structure, and they must demonstrate the role in the collaborative stakeholder structure in terms of the governance and decision-making. There will be 1 point to proposals that include in the collaborative stakeholder structure at least one partner with experience relevant to priority populations. Experience here includes a lived experience from a priority population, and you can see a full list in the guidelines. 1 point to proposals that include in the collaborative stakeholder structure at least one partner with expertise serving priority populations. Expertise can include subject matter expertise, professional expertise like advocacy, and or providing direct services and programs. And lastly, 1 point to proposals that include in the collaborative stakeholder structure at least one partner with expertise on any of the following elements from program objectives: local leadership and grassroots engagement, civic and community development, and climate resilience awareness and activities. And again, these points are going towards proposals that include the following in a collaborative stakeholder structure if already formed, or proposed for a future collaborative stakeholder structure. Then there's the lead applicant capacity for 15 points. We're looking for demonstration of financial capacity to receive funds, execute the grant, and subcontract as needed, and the demonstration of management and organizational capacity to implement the proposed work on time and within budget. Project impact and feasibility is out of 40 points. Here, we're looking for a demonstrated need or value of the proposed planning activities, including demonstration of building climate resilience and community resilience through anticipated project benefits and outcomes. You can use the CalAdapt local snapshot tool to provide a preliminary baseline. We do have a guidance document for this that can be found on the CRC application materials webpage. We encourage you to add the best available data that you can. This can be quantitative, qualitative, narrative, or spatial that is inclusive of your regional, local, and/or community data. You can discuss the gaps and needs for local priority populations, and it also must include local climate risks, exposures, and adaptation and resilience measures, both current and historic. We're also looking for evidence of how the proposed activities will meet program objectives and that the proposed work plan provides a clear and comprehensive plan with activities focused on the proposed planning area and site. And lastly, we are awarding points for a clear and relevant project design and demonstrated ability to directly meet readiness requirements to apply for subsequent rounds of CRC funding or additional relevant funding opportunities. We do have some additional points that we award to proposals located in and benefiting priority communities and to proposals located in and benefiting unincorporated communities and/or rural communities. And then lastly, there is 5 points for the sharing plan category. Here we are looking for replicability and usefulness for other communities with a clear, effective plan for sharing. And I will now pass to Dora to cover the grant administration.
Thanks, Jess. So planning grant terms are 2 years with the option to extend on a case-by-case basis. Grants will be executed between SGC and the lead applicant only. SGC may provide advance payments to qualifying awards to ensure effective implementation of the program. Advance payments can be up to 25% of the total grant award and spread across a series of installments between the start date identified in the grant agreement until June 30th of 2025. The complete schedule, process, and reporting requirements for advance pay will be determined in the grant agreement. Per CRC program specific advance pay authority, advance payment will be limited to the service portions of awards when the grantee is a community-based private nonprofit agency, which includes but may not be limited to community-based organizations and non-governmental organizations. Government entities, including city and county governments and federally recognized California Native American tribes, are not eligible for advance payment. All grantees eligible for advance payment will be required to prioritize partners that experience low cash reserves to receive advances. You can see section 10.4, disbursements and accounting of funds in the CRC Round 1 final guidelines for more information on how to receive advance pay. So the grantee cannot request advance payments or reimbursement for any costs incurred or work completed before grant execution. Grantees may request advance payment or reimbursement from SGC for planning grants on a quarterly basis, which is every 3 months. SGC will retain the last 5% of the overall grant budget to be paid once the state has determined that the grant terms have been fulfilled. For reimbursement payments, partners must invoice the grantee before the grantee submits an invoice to SGC. The grantee will be responsible for compiling all invoices, supporting documentation, and reporting materials for themselves and the partners into a single package. Once the package has been approved for payment, funds will be dispersed to the grantee. The grantee is responsible for disbursing payment to their partners in accordance with their signed partnership agreement. Tribes will not be required to sign a limited waiver of sovereignty immunity to receive payments on a reimbursement basis from SGC through the CRC program. Next, we'll go a little bit into some of our reporting requirements for the planning grants. Regular check-ins are required. All grantees can expect to participate in regular check-in meetings with the CRC staff and with contractors. During these meetings, grantees can describe their work and CRC staff can offer feedback and guidance on draft deliverables. During each check-in meeting, CRC staff will take notes on accomplishments, challenges, and lessons learned to identify emerging trends, best practices, opportunities for greater support, and success stories. CRC staff and contractors will also support grantees in meeting the various administrative criteria, developing financial and grant management processes, and building connections between grantees and the state and federal agencies. In terms of check-in frequency, the lead applicant as the liaison between CRC staff and the partners will participate in more frequent check-in meetings with CRC staff and contractors. The grantee check-in meeting schedule will align with the invoicing schedule. Partners can expect to participate in 2 full collaborative check-ins each grant year. In addition to regular check-ins, grantees will need to submit annual progress reports that provide updates on the overall status of the grant. They will include high-level questions not captured in the regular check-ins. Grantees will also need to submit a final report on the overall status of the grant, including lessons learned, barriers, and success stories. Budget reports, an inventory of purchased equipment will be reported annually and at the end of the grant term. Detailed work plans and budgets will be revised on a regular basis. These documents will contain more detail than the grant agreement and will be used as administrative tracking tools between the grantee and the state. And in terms of reporting templates and forms, SGC will provide templates for the progress reports, work plan, budget, invoice form, advance payment request form, and reimbursement request form. These documents will record the project's expenditures and assess general progress on deliverables. The final grant administration sections are publicity requirements, audit and record retention, and performance. You can see sections 10.7 ownership through sections 10.10 on performance for more information on grant administration. And this is all for the planning grants. I'll now pass to Jess to share about the application resources and materials.
Thanks, Dora. We have a lot of resources available to learn about the CRC program and to help you develop your application. So all of the program resources and materials can be found on the CRC resources page. You can find this page by navigating to this button on the CRC webpage that says CRC resources. The blue arrow on the screen is pointing to it in the bottom corner now. So if you click on that button, it will take you to the CRC resources page. Across the top, you'll see these 3 main buckets: program information, program guidelines, and application materials. The CRC team will be hosting office hours throughout the application window to support applicants. You can find the full office hour schedule and registration information underneath those buckets across the top. At the very bottom is a program timeline that we'll cover briefly in a moment as well. So focusing on those top buckets on the resources page, in the most left bucket, program information, the top button takes you directly to the program's fact sheet. This gives a high-level, at-a-glance summary of the program. Also in this bucket, you can find the CRC Grant Type Guide, which helps applicants identify which grant type would be the best fit for them in their communities. And lastly, the Frequently Asked Questions button will take you to an additional web page of frequently asked questions with answers about the program. In the center bucket, Program Guidelines, the button takes you to a separate page where you can find the CRC Round 1 final guidelines, a staff report and memo that kind of summarize the changes from the draft to the final version, along with the first video in this series, the CRC Round 1 final guidelines and NOFA webinar. In the most right bucket, application materials, there are 2 buttons, Round 1 app materials and Round 1 application TA. The Round 1 application TA button takes you to a separate page that tells you about our TA program. And while we're offering technical assistance and the request form does remain open for the next couple of days into the beginning of August, in the event that more resources do become available, there's not a high likelihood of TA resources being available to accommodate any more additional requests at this time. The first button, Round 1 app materials, will have the majority of resources and materials you will need for your application. So once you open this, it takes you to the CRC application materials page that we reference a few times in the application itself. This is where you can find a link to the application itself on the submittable platform, guidance documents, the notice of funding availability, the intent to apply survey, which is optional and will remain open throughout the application period, and the full application webinar series. At the top of the CRC application materials page, you will find a button that takes you to the grant application on the submittable platform. The section underneath that is where you can find guidance documents that will be useful to reference as you're developing your applications. The planning area mapping guide will be useful to planning grant applicants. Okay, now we will move into our submittable demo. So I'll stop sharing my screen so I can open up the submittable platform. Perfect. And I'll reshare my screen. Perfect. All right, so here is the landing page on Submittable. I've clicked on the link on our resources page in the round 1 app materials that took me to this page. You just scroll all the way down, it tells you some important deadlines, some instructions, and then we do have our 3 grant type applications. So I'm going to press submit on the planning grant application, and it will open this up for me. So here it provides a high-level summary of the planning grants and shares where to find more information about the CRC program. Again, you can go to the CRC webpage, review the guidelines, grant type guide, and all other materials on the application materials page. They're all linked here. Then again, we do see that due date of September 18th, 2023 by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when all grant types are due, including the CRC planning grants. It does have additional guidance here underneath as well. And in case this isn't zoomed in enough, it just zoomed in again. So here's some additional guidance. So applicants must complete all required sections of the online form via Submittable. It will kind of notify you which sections are required. So don't worry about missing a section that is required. Then we do encourage applicants to download, complete, and re-upload all the required application components with the appropriate naming convention. This is also clearly defined in the application. An example of some of these downloadable templates could be the community engagement plan, the work plan, the planning or the partnership agreement, etc. So just download those templates, complete them as needed, and then re-upload them using the appropriate naming convention that we list in the guideline in the application. And then lastly, reference all other CRC application materials as relevant on the application materials webpage. There will be links directly to those resources or to that page where you can access some of those guidance documents. So then underneath that, we do also give additional guidance for before you begin, just some things to keep in mind. Once you create a submittable account to begin a specific CRC grant type application, so in this case, a CRC planning grant, you can share your login credentials with other partners to work on a shared application. Submittable also allows you to save progress along the way, so you can begin and come back to the application over time. If you decide to instead apply for a different grant type, let's say you're switching from a planning grant to a project development grant, you will then have to begin a new application in the new grant type and re-enter your information. If you have any questions about Submittable, please contact this their contact line, which you can access through this link. They're very helpful and can help you with all of your questions, but if you have any other further questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us at our team inbox, crc@sgc.ca.gov. So as you work on your application, here are some other notes to keep in mind. Instructions are included throughout the application on how to complete the planning grant application. There are additional reference documents to support the development of your application that can be found on the application materials webpage as mentioned. Application technical assistance is offered on a competitive prioritized basis, but due to limited resources, these requests were due on June 23rd, and CRC program staff and the TA provider have already assigned which applicants are receiving TA, and there's a high likelihood that additional resources will not be available to support any more requests that come in. CRC program staff are creating online videos such as this one detailing each grant type. So please reference this whole series to better understand each specific grant type. And again, if you're new to the program and you'd like to review kind of more of a general broad overview, please review the first video in this series that's already posted, CRC Round 1 Final Guidelines and NOPA webinar. CRC program staff will also host virtual office hours to invite interested applicants to ask questions and workshop through issues. You can see our full office hour schedule and register on the CRC program resources page that I showed you a little bit earlier. And then given the lag time on website updates, please email the crc@sgc.ca.gov account for the fastest, most accurate, and most tailored guidance from the CRC program team. Due to the high volume of interest, emailing the team inbox is recommended and typically faster than emailing individual staff members. So keep scrolling down. Obviously, we thank you so much for being interested in the program, for starting an application. You get a little note from us, and then want to quickly go over how you can invite team members to collaborate on your application. So you can click on this link at the top in the right-hand corner that my cursor is on right now called Manage Collaborators. You can click that and a dialog box will appear asking you to enter the email addresses of your collaborators. You can then enter those email addresses in the field, then click Save or Invite, and then you can close it. Invited collaborators will receive an email letting them know that you've invited them to collaborate on a draft submission using Submittable. In order to communicate with collaborators through the Submittable platform, all invitees must accept the invite before the owner of the submission, that's you, hit Submit. After you sent invitations to collaborate, you can click on the Invite Collaborators link again, this Manage, and anytime to see the status of your invitations. In the row for each invitee who has not accepted their invitation yet, you will see a pending indication. There's also a trash can next to each person's name so that the submission owner can remove anyone that they no longer want to collaborate on the submission. And I have been hearing about the collaboration piece. If multiple people are collaborating on an application at the same time, one person's edits might override the others. So make sure you're communicating with the people who are going to be collaborating on your application. And then lastly, you can click on this link, follow this link for additional information for more information on how to collaborate with someone on a submission. So we'll go ahead and look further into the application itself for planning grants. This section 1 is kind of the main application. It asks for eligibility, like applicant type, facility type, point of contact, and then where your project is located. Excuse me. And then section 2 is kind of more so on the required components. We do, as mentioned, have some guidance above. And this is a great example of one of our downloadable templates. We have our application workbook. So this does include budget, work plan, and guiding prompts so that you're aware of what to provide for this requirement. Then here is a good example of like how you would upload your file. So you would download the workbook here, you would complete it, and then rename it, and then re-upload to Submittable using this box here. So you could just click on the choose file. We'll randomly select something to put in here. And also it does tell you underneath the field the acceptable file types. And so it will only allow you to upload those file types. So make sure that you're using the downloadable template or at least using it to guide your development of your own workbook that is within these required file types. Then you can upload any supporting documentation. Then we go into applicant eligibility, the facility eligibility, the planning area eligibility, and then go into some other of the program thresholds like capacity. The asterisk here, in red, that does indicate a requirement. And then there is also language underneath that says response required to indicate that. So hopefully there's no confusion on what is required for applicants. And then section 3 will be the narrative questions. So this is a great kind of section to provide more information about your community, about the priority populations you intend to serve, any other information that you'd like us to know that could really inform us on your project and your plan a little bit more. All right, and then we have our community engagement plan template, of course, for you to download and use. We have our proposed collaborative stakeholder structure, the lead applicant capacity again, project impact and feasibility, our additional points. So this is located in our priority populations and priority communities section. And then this is our last section, section 4, for additional documentation. So please upload in this section any additional documentation that you would like us to review in order to evaluate your application. And then you'll get to the bottom, you've finished completing. So once you complete, when you've completed finishing the CRC Round 1 Planning Grant application, we do recommend going back and reviewing your materials and answers to confirm that all attachments are correct, current, and appropriately titled. You will receive an email confirmation when your application has been successfully submitted. Check your email to confirm that you've received this receipt. If you do not receive a confirmation email, Please first check your junk or spam filters for your email account. Check which email address you used to set up your submittable account and make sure that is the email that you're checking. And then make sure you successfully submitted the application and it does not remain as a saved draft. If you don't receive the confirmation email, you will not receive other important information relevant to your CRC Round 1 Planning Grant application. So if you've already looked into those options and still don't receive a confirmation email, please notify us at crc@sgc.ca.gov, and we'll follow up to figure out what the issue is. And that concludes our demo of Submittable. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and get the presentation back up. All right, so here is the updated CRC program timeline. July 2023, the full application materials were released and applications did open. July through September, the full application webinar series is going to be released and the CRC team hosts virtual office hours. September 18th, final applications are due for all CRC grant types, and December 2023, SGC is planning to make round 1 CRC awards. Throughout the application window, our team is hosting a total of 15 virtual office hours to support our applicants. Please note there are 4 more audience-specific workshops in this series intended for applicants from rural and tribal communities. So please be mindful of this while registering to attend an office hour session. Please also note that there are a total of 4 that have been extended to 2 hours in length each, and prior registration is encouraged. At the time of registration, you will also be able to submit questions to be answered during the Q&A portion of the office hour, which of course you can ask during the office hour as well, or you can also indicate any translation or interpretation requests also during the registration process. On the slide here are the remaining office hours that we do have for August and September. We did host some back in July as well, but those aren't relevant anymore. So here are the remaining ones. You can find the full schedule and registration information on that CRC resources page that I showed y'all earlier. And we just want to thank you so much for having interest in our program, for watching this video, and for filling out an application. Please contact us with any questions you may have. Our email is down in the video description, as well as our webpage and a link to sign up for the CRC email list to receive updates about the program. Additionally, we really appreciate you joining us today and would love the opportunity to follow up with you to send forthcoming application materials and important dates. So if you have a moment, please take our brief post-webinar survey linked in the video description below as well. Again, thank you so much for your interest in this exciting new program.